Welcome back to Trauma to Soul. This is part 4 with Mandy and love addiction. We talk about men and emotions, superficial connections, being you in a relationship, and the gender stigma. You can find this on the web at traumatosol.com and at social media at Trauma to Soul. All right, sit back, relax, and we're going to pick up right where part 3 left off.
And it's also the narrative in society when it comes to men. You know, the narrative for you guys is quite harsh. It's, you guys are going to be warriors. You got to be emotionless. You got to be strong. You got to be capable. And I find that with a lot of my female friends. Like, they're like, oh, that guy's a bit of a wuss. And I'm like, why? And they're like, oh, he's very talkative, or he talks a lot about his emotions. And I'm like, what? Like, how is that a bad thing? Like, you can't judge somebody. If you have this Prince Charming in your head who's going to ride in on a white horse and not say anything and put you on the back and ride into the sunset and live happily ever after, you're sadly mistaken. Like, relationships, I don't like to dwell too much on the male female, but I do think it's still prevalent. I think if a man shows emotion, he's ostracized.
It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal, especially when you're a sensitive guy. So your whole life, I tried to run with tough people.
Of course.
Because, and then you never let any of that sensitivity out. So, part of the journey that I've been doing with the writing and the podcast and stuff is just kind of going into, pain and vulnerability with all that. But I'm graduating now. Like, there's a whole nother layer that I'm uncovering, and I've written a ton about it, but I'm terrified to put it out there just for exactly what you're saying. Do you know how many women have left because I became honest and vulnerable and sensitive?
Wow, that's
scary. Just about everyone. So I'm going to take that and I am going to bury it, and you're not going to see it. What I really, truly want is to be able to be that sometimes, but soon as women see that, they run. We know it, so we don't do it. We have no needs, wants, desires, or emotions other than sexual. That's the only thing that I will allow myself to be needy with without shaming myself. And then, coming from where I came from, I still have shame about it, because if you are not in that Neanderthal type of space in the bedroom, it doesn't feel, you get in your head and it's like, well, that was kind of soft and loving, so we got to stop that shit right now. You know what I mean? Like, so there's a lot of this conflict that goes on. I mean, underneath all the gender roles, we all want the same thing: love and be loved. And we want to be able to express it freely without thought. And, back to before, the fantasy you're talking about, that's the best part about it. I get to express how I feel.
Yeah.
And not have to worry about it. It gets to the point where people start seeing through the armor and that fantasy, where they start to see the red flags and the imperfections. That soon as that happens, I have to wall up, because I like how you're seeing me over here. This is really nice. Keep looking
Exactly.
Over here. It's like a fucking
puppet show. This is
show.
my best foot. Yeah. Don't look at the other foot. Just look at this foot. Yeah.
Wait, she just glanced to the other side. Fuck. Overcompensate on this side. Overcompensate. Distract.
Oh, that's exactly right. And the thing is, it's exhausting. It's tiring. Why do we want to put up the mask? Why can't we just be? And I've noticed that it's because people, and this is not a gender thing, this is across the board. If I talk to somebody openly and I'm vulnerable, I can tell you, Joe, I have so many uncomfortable souls around me. Like, whoa, she's feeling something. She's expressing it. Back up slow. And I'm like, whoa, guys, why are we not talking about this? It's important. Like, I had to start on antidepressants. I had to. I'm a spiritualist. It's not what I truly believe in, but I knew I needed it.
Right.
And when I went into work and people asked me, I was like, oh no, I'm medicated, bro. I am medicated to the eyeballs. That is how I'm surviving this. I don't know about you guys. They were like shocked, like, oh my God. And I was like, you know what, if we don't talk about it, if we're not secure in ourselves, then your tribe, the people that are meant for you, the people that are meant to be in your life, are going to accept every single part of you. They're going to accept the bad with the good. That is how it works, and that's how you know that that's real love.
Right.
Because here I am, I look like shit, I'm medicated, I'm having a breakdown. Cool, let's sit, let's talk about it, let's express, let's heal, let's feel, and that's how you know those are your people. Why do you
Right.
want to surround yourself with superficial connections?
It's as time goes on, they drop off more and more. It's I think what happens is, and that's great because so basically, instead of hiding the parts of you that you don't want people to see, you accepted them, you became comfortable with it, you owned it, and then you're able to share it. And there's I notice with the podcast that I do, I'm amazed at how many people have crawled out of the woodwork
Yes.
and said things to me that I would never imagine people saying. So it doesn't feel acceptable because nobody's talking about it. You look on social media, everybody has the perfect dish in front of them, the perfect hair, the perfect set, and I'm sitting here in like my pajamas unshaven for a month. And I'm like, I haven't left the house, and 7-Eleven seems like too far of an effort. Can I get them to deliver? So you get kind of shamed on top of that, but we all have the same bullshit underneath. Nobody's talking
Exactly.
about it. I think that's what it is for me, is I need to own those deep dark parts that I protected so much. And the more I express and the more I expose, the freer I am and the better I get at it. The problem is, the deeper I'm going, the more difficult it is, because now I am at the man stigma. you know can I
Yeah.
really be talking about love and emotions and feelings and daisies and fields and sunsets and sunflower, like all of that shit? And who's going to love me for that? Every woman just about that I dated left me because of it, because at some point I had to become me and get to that. I have to show that soft spot at some point, because that's where love is, that's where connection is, that's where vulnerability is, that's where growth is. That's where the beauty of being with yourself and another human being in a real way lives. And I'm fucking terrified of having people see that. So now for me, I have to get over that man thing. I have to start putting those words out there. And I'm terrified. And this is a great conversation, because a lot of stuff we're talking about, I'm just recently becoming aware of the whole love addiction and the way I've been and the patterns and how, damaging it's been, that I'm wondering if anybody else is thinking as crazy as it seems to me with the words that are coming on paper. And I feel like if I was a woman, I feel like it would be easier
Yeah.
to put this out there. Like, I take a lot of shit from people I grew up with the stuff I write and the stuff I say. Like, I've gotten my ass kicked, and it's been
No, of
real
course.
hard. It's gotten easier, and I'm glad I did it, because there's a layer of toughness by going into that vulnerability. But how do we start to share those with other people? If we're not sharing it with ourselves, there's no way we're sharing it with anybody else. So nobody really wants to talk about it. It's hard, it's painful, you're going to cry, you're going to feel, you're going to be emotional. You have to go to these shitty fucking places of misery and pain and fucking sit there alone in dark rooms for days on end to process it. It's like, fuck, I just want to laugh. And it's like, you're not going to really truly laugh if you are holding this shit in the darkness. The only way you're going to laugh is letting it out and making space for joy to come up. And there's not a lot of people that are willing to do that. And your world does get smaller. The good news is, the love and joy you have within yourself starts to grow when you take the unconscious people who are shaming, controlling, and manipulating you to get you to be on board with them, when it goes against everything that you are. And I did it just so I wasn't alone and had to face myself.
There's a quote, and I can't remember who said it, but it's always stood in my mind. People can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves. And I
Do
promise
you know
you.
how many therapists I have fired because they couldn't go half the fucking depth that I could go? I'm
Exactly.
like, you are
Exactly.
talking about, crackerjacks in the movie theater, and I'm talking about like Vietnam. What the fuck? You're
Exactly.
fired.
You're a pond and I'm an ocean. But I mean, it comes back to that space of somebody who is grounded in their self-worth, somebody who is grounded in their self-esteem. They're not going to actively search out those things. They're not, the one thing I find the most amazing is people with a high self-esteem surround themselves with people they know are going to help them grow. They're not going to surround themselves with people, because if you actually take a look at all of your friendships and your connections and you really delve into them, you can see who you have a true connection with and who you fucking don't. Like, that's what I realized over this year. I was like, why do I subject myself to spending time with this person when it doesn't bring me joy, doesn't bring me happiness? And I'm not saying all connections should be joy and happiness all the time, but I kept surrounding myself with people who were stuck because I was stuck.
Right.
And the minute I thought, okay, take humans out of the equation, take the men, the women, take them all out of the equation. Let me sit with me. Let me know myself. What's if I can sit on a Saturday night and write an article, I can't tell you how happy that makes me.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. And that's not an external thing. That's me. That's my creator. I'm creating. And that sort of stuff is the stuff that, especially if you feel like you're a love addict, especially if you're chasing that high, you can create that high for yourself. You just haven't given yourself enough time and enough space to do it. And you will lose people and you will face rejection. I have had people say to my face, dude, that's too deep. I can't go that deep. Like,
Right.
take your deep and fuck off. And I'm like, cool.
Fucking
Thanks for
off.
play. Yeah, fucking off on this side. But it's also about being comfortable enough in that space to know that I would internalize that a lot. I would be like, oh, this person doesn't like me because I've said this, or I've said something that doesn't resonate with them, or they don't agree with it, and now they don't like me. Now I don't do that. I was having a conversation with a person about retrenchment processes and all of this stuff, and he came across quite emotionless. And I said to him, people are allowed to feel how they feel. People are allowed to process those emotions. And if they're angry, we have to give them the space to
Mm.
talk about it, to express it, because it's important for them. Not everyone deals with their emotions so well. And I could see on his face, he was like, oh my God, like so much emotion, so much, whatever. And usually I would have been like, oh, nobody likes me. And now I was like, fuck it.
Right.
Fuck it. Like, if you reject what I'm saying, awesome. My emotions are not dependent on you. They're dependent on me. This is my opinion. This is how I feel. I'm gonna express it. I'm gonna own it. And that's how it goes.
How'd you make that shift? Because I'm still right now in my head, I'm thinking about a dinner I went to 3 weeks ago and something I said that was fucking ridiculous. And I still think the six people who were there are talking about me and what an ass I was.
I think that's so funny because I mean I really do the same. Sometimes I say something and I'm like, oh God, that person thinks I'm a moron. Um, I think it just comes it comes from that internal space. And it comes, the more you own your shit, the easier it becomes. And it's also about having awareness. So sometimes I'll put something out and it's horrible. And somebody will say, wow, that was really shit. And I'm like, you know what? It actually was.
Right.
But it's you accepting. It's an acceptance within you. These are my values. This is my opinion. I have a right to express it. How somebody else takes it is completely up to them. I've been in situations where I've thought that people are alcoholics, and I haven't said that, but I have said, I think you drink too much. Like, it's not good for your body. It's not good for your mind. And I get horrible reactions. I get people like, oh, well, how else am I supposed to let my hair down? And I'm like, well, there's like a lot of stuff that's quite healthy that you could try. But it's also about knowing your truth and living your truth. And a lot of the writers on the website that I write for, Elephant Journal, is a lot of people are talking about authenticity. And the more you embrace it, the more you own it, the easier it becomes. It's like riding a bike.
It is. It's hard. It's difficult to get there because there's so much work involved. You know,
Yes.
we live in a family system. We take on a role. We create a false self so that we can be loved and accepted. And then this happens before we even know that it happens.
Yes.
So undoing that false self, if I'm a certain way and this is the way I get loved, and
Yeah.
traditionally have been loved, I'm going to keep doing that. If I'm
Yeah.
authentic, I wasn't loved. So why
Yeah.
would I want to be authentic? It's that shift. So it's that scale that you try to get balance. As you start stripping away the layers of the false self, you become more authentic and it starts to balance
Right.
out. I find it probably one of the hardest things is soothing myself out of self-hate
Yeah.
when I'm being authentic. And I feel like there's such a small percentage of the population that's doing hard work comparatively, that
Yeah.
you're surrounded by everybody doing and being a certain way, that when you
Yeah.
choose to be different, it feels like you're fighting the world. Where, why can't you just allow me to be, the freak that I am?
Hmm.
You be whoever you need to be, and let's call it a day. Why is this huge projection on me when I'm different? Because it's that mirror, right? They
Yeah.
see me starting to live a more authentic life. I'm pulling away from the relationship of what it was. And then it puts a mirror on them to see what their life really is. So then there's a shame that slides back to you, and it's questioning. You were saying about the gaslighting and the relationship where you questioned yourself.
My sanity.
I grew up constantly questioning myself to keep the giants in the house at peace. That
Exactly. Keep it
anytime I
keeping.
was authentic and just shot off the cuff without thinking about every word, every nuance, and how I was going to say it, it never worked out well. So I don't trust myself to be myself. So there's a trusting part that has to come with that. And a lot of that for me has been, I mean, we were talking about it before. I've been social distancing for 30 years, right? So before COVID, I was just starting to come out of my shell and starting to put myself in places that were really uncomfortable as me.
Yeah.
And then you go home, you self-soothe, you play the tapes in your head, you realize it's okay, not everybody hates you, and you don't hate yourself. And you did have valid points, and people were listening. And, I feel like Al Franken, doggone it, I'm nice, and people like me. You go through the positive affirmations. But there's that alone processing that I do. And then it may take me an hour to get back out there, or it may take me 5 days or 3 days. And then the time gets shorter and you do build that trust up with yourself. I think the hard part is for people coming from where we had come from, is there
Yeah.
was no positive mirroring. There was no validation. There was no freedom to
No.
express who you are. Your authenticity was completely trampled,
Dismissed.
dismissed. And
Yeah.
there's very few people, and we're all doing the same type of work. So we're doing a lot of it alone. So how can we get the people we need in the same room when we're isolating and processing alone, when really what we need is the mirroring face coming back and go, no, man, I get that. I get it. Yeah. No, I've been there.
Exactly.
I understand.
Exactly.
Where you go tell people who aren't doing the work and they're just like, dude, you're fucked. Just have a drink. Shut the fuck up. Like,
Exactly. To be a sheeple and do what we're doing.
right.
Okay, that's part 4 of Love Addiction. We will be back next week with part 5. If you know anybody that would benefit from the podcast, please share it with them. And if you're enjoying it, please leave us a review on iTunes. Thanks so much. Have a great week.